Ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this first 360 stream where I, your host, Miya Knights, will be discussing the future of performance max and advertising in the age of Gen AI with an amazing expert, Matz Lukmani. So thank you so much for joining. Drop us a little hi, a little wave in the chat. Let us know where you're joining from. I believe this webinar is going to be made available on demand as well. So welcome to you wherever and whenever you're joining us. But I just let you know a little bit about who I am and do a little bit of housekeeping, and then we'll dive straight into meeting Matt and hearing about what's been keeping him busy. So my name's Miya Knights. I'm editor and publisher of Retail Technology Magazine. And I've written a couple of books as well, one about Amazon and another one about Tesco Club Card called Omnichannel Retail. So I was truly honored when the leading performance marketing agency 360 OM decided to set up this series of webinars where we're going to meet some of the industry's pioneers in regards to what's happening today in terms of search and ads and just winning with digital and online with customers. So with that, this webinar today is designed to help merchants and brands and the agencies and broader ecosystem that serve them best capitalize on the game-changing benefits of Gen AI. And I can't think of a better person to have on this discussion than the person I'd like to introduce to you now. I'm going to be discussing the critical marketing technology trends that can help boost performance, leads, sales, and revenue to turbocharge your business with Matz Lukmani. Matz is EMEA product lead for Google Performance Max in the EMEA region. He's based in London, and he's been with Google for over 10 years, working on products like Analytics 360, Google Ads, of course, Search Ads 360, and Firebase Analytics. Prior to that, he worked in the US for over 15 years in a number of leadership roles like Mediacom and PricewaterhouseCoopers, to name a few. But he is really a specialist in analytic consulting services in the field of web analytics, predictive analytics, and advanced marketing AI across a broader group of industries. So as it applies to your business day to day, I'm really pleased to have him here today. And before we bring him on, last thing is to say, please do drop your questions whenever they pop up in the chat, and I will make sure I get to them towards the end of this 45-minute webinar with Matt. So I'd like to welcome Matt to the stage.
Hey, Miya. Glad to be here on the call.
Oh, I'm so pleased to have you here. We've got so much to talk about, and I'm really excited because you are such an expert. I've just told everybody a little bit about your background to bring us bang up to date. What's been keeping you busy?
A lot of things. Well, recently, just making sure I get all the gifts I need to give out to my friends and relatives, since it's very close to Christmas now. But this year's been extremely busy for us at Google, and especially in Europe and Middle East and Africa markets. Just to give you a soundbite, I lead, as you mentioned, product commercialization within Google and focusing specifically on Performance Max. That's been my core focus area. The product itself has been around for 4 years now, so it's actually no longer a brand new product. It's lived its days. It's growing, and our promise with PMax was to bring like the full force of Google AI across all our campaigns within a single campaign type. So if you are running a Google inventory campaign types covering search, YouTube, Gmail, potentially maps, display, discover, our aim was to run one campaign that covers all of this inventory, helps advertisers reach a level of sophistication, but also simplifies and consolidates their accounts. I am from a stats background, so I love looking at numbers. And at Google, we look at these studies to see, the products that we are building, are they doing the right thing for our customers? And the recent study we did around advertisers using Performance Max versus those that were not, we realized those that were using Performance Max were driving up to 27% better conversions for their investments on single channel campaigns as a comparative. This number, based on the study we did a year back, was 18%. So consistently, all the new tech is helping advertisers get better from an AI-powered end-to-end campaign. My job has been to lead go-to-market efforts and commercialization efforts across Europe, Middle East, and Africa markets for the Performance Max product. So in short, what I do is I focus very closely and work closely with our sales teams that face our customers, occasionally get to speak with some of the customers, which is amazing, and then interface and be the conduit with our product and engineering teams, and in areas of figuring out what are the top product asks our customers need in this market, all the new features we are building, rolling them out in our market, and then figuring out what are the top best practices that you should be using to get the most out of Performance Max, and working with agencies to kind of deliver on that. There's tons to do there and unpack there. And on PMax, I think our focus has been around performance. How do you improve it? Giving customers control on creatives, and then finally campaign level controls in general, so they can tune AI in the right directions. And then finally was reporting. That's been a top ask when it comes to PMax, making sure we are building the right solutions, and then working with customers to make sure they're getting the best value out of these reporting and insights modules we are building within PMax.
Yeah, gosh, I mean, I'm glad I asked. You've been pretty busy. And as you were sort of explaining what's been keeping you busy, I was thinking to myself, you're right that you said, Performance Max has been around for 4 years. But I really think in terms of the wider world, generative AI has captured everybody's imaginations in 2024. So it's a good reminder that you've been sort of living with this and progressing this in 4 years. But I wondered whether or not you'd agree that you've seen the sort of the pace of acceleration in terms of demand for this kind of capability, the kind of capabilities you describe, really accelerating on behalf of, I think when you talk about, those top product asks, that it must be that the clients that you get to interface with are just so much more savvy, so much more aware. Have you really noticed that kind of uptick this year in terms of awareness of what Gen AI can do, especially when it's introduced to power Performance Max?
Yeah, I think the awareness is taking off heavily, and I've seen more customers using Gen AI features, whether it's Google or beyond, using them to build better creatives, going to market. There's still some hesitation when it comes to, where are these ads being served? Where is the limit? How much should I be experimenting? Copyrights style questions. And these are all valid questions and something the industry needs to evolve together on. But there's been a massive uptake. And I think when that happens, it becomes more clear, if you're in the space of advertising and marketing, creatives have the biggest impact. If you're able to build brilliant creatives, you will drive amazing results. And based on many studies that I've seen, even across the globe, creatives on an average have the biggest impact on your marketing campaign performance. So now with Gen AI, you have the chance to really come up with brilliant creatives. And if in the past it was really production cost or time that was holding you back, those could be lesser reason to hold back with building better creatives.
Yeah. And just one last question in that front, because you were talking about the focus this year in terms of what you've been developing as regards PMax features. And I wondered if you could just give us a little bit more detail on that reporting that you talked about. What is it to do with assets, search terms, insights? What are you looking at specifically there?
I love it, Miya. You're asking the question a practitioner asks me every time we get into calls on what can I see more, and can I use it for channel management better? And that's a brilliant question. Honestly, that keeps us on our toes, and also it's a reflection of what we are building is is landing right and people want more and not less. So in general, there are like 4-5 areas we are looking at. I think the 4 are the top areas where we are developing and building out more features within PMax. This year, the focus of areas, the first one was looking at performance improvements. So this is a pretty back-end discussion on our end to figure out what are the algorithmic changes we should be making to make the campaign give you better quality leads if you're driving lead quality or lead generation business objectives with Performance Max. If you're running a campaign, your objective was to get performance goals and hit your targets, but also maintain a level of stability. What can we do to make the campaigns more stable, but also give you insights that can make you feel more comfortable where you are in the curve of performance. So we've launched something called pacing insights in PMax that allows you to see just that. On the creative front, control has been a big topic, and I want to acknowledge that. Like, I worked at an agency, and this is very critical. Sometimes you have stakeholders, and they have a very specific need of how their brand should be represented, and we've been doing a lot of work around how do we give better creative controls within PMax, because the idea is it's AI based. And the best example is brand guidelines. It's a feature we've launched that allows advertisers to control their fonts, their background colors, and their logos. So no matter how adventurous Gen AI models get or automation gets with your creatives, there are certain baselines that will make sure it's maintained consistently in all the ads that gets published out. On the reporting side, the one you mentioned, that is very interesting. And to me, that's also very exciting because the model learns and tries to get you the right results. But you want to also see where the conversions are coming from, and also what assets are working and what are not, so you can test them better. So this year, we've launched something called asset level conversion reporting. So you can go beyond just looking at asset groups, which is a kind of a grouping of all the assets that you're running within your campaign, to a much more granular level, at an actual asset level, and see what are the conversions that are being driven that have these assets in the conversion path, click to purchase. Additionally, a lot of feedback we got was we want to understand what can we do to improve our assets and coverage so we can get better performance, and it wasn't very clear in the UI. So our aim this year was to launch something called asset conversion insights or coverage insights within PMax, and that allows you to see specifically which components are missing in your campaigns. Are you missing any minimum number of headlines or images or videos, and because of that your performance is limited? Now that's much more clear. It'll come up in red in your UI. And finally, the number one ask that I've gotten when I started working on this product was search terms. PMax operates across all channels, but search is a big driver. Can we see specifically which search terms people are engaging before converting through PMax campaigns, so they can manage their search campaigns better as well? And that's been a big launch this year. We've allowed people to see what is all these search terms that PMax is operating on and driving conversions. And now you can go back into history, see all your campaign data. You can also plug into our API, pull out all the raw data if you want, and there's no level of sampling. So you kind of see all keywords, not just the top performing categories. And that's been a big initiative on our end, and that's landing really well. Customers want to see what's happening under the box so they can feel more comfortable with the data and the performance.
Absolutely, I bet. I think thank you so much for giving such extra detail, such a detailed answer on that front. I was particularly caught by the brand guidelines, because when I was introducing you to our audience, I was sort of saying that this 360 stream is designed for brand owners, but also for agencies and the broader ecosystems that serve them. So having that set in a way that can be distributed and shared amongst outside of your own sort of four walls, as it were, for all the people that support you in terms of developing creatives and so on is so important. And I'm really pleased that you've been even though you've done so much, you've been busy enough to devote some time to reporting too, because I know that's been a question a lot of people ask me about when they ask me for my potted opinion on what's happening with Google. So to hear it from you is absolutely brilliant. I think if we kind of just take all that you've given us, all that detail that you've given us, I can also see, to your point at the beginning of this conversation, you are helping users consolidate and simplify, which is why the reporting is so important, because it actually becomes more complex under the covers, doesn't it? But in that regard, what are the benefits that you're highlighting for advertising and marketing suppliers and end users? We've talked a lot about detail. Let's kind of take it up a couple of notches from a sort of an umbrella view and try and just, I suppose, capture the hearts and minds and imaginations of those stragglers that haven't quite yet necessarily been sold on Performance Max or aren't really deep and down in the weeds with what it can do for them already.
Yeah, no, that's great. I'll start with the most important thing that should be the most important thing for everyone in the industry. It's the user. And from a user perspective, if I'm in the market to buy running shoes or going through my Christmas shopping checklist, the most important thing is seeing relevant content. And whether it's organic or ads, the more relevant we make it, the more appealing they are, the better their user journeys are. So I think the number one advantage of campaign types like Performance Max and anything that's using AI-based automation is to bring that relevance factor into ad serving. So if you're a user in the market looking for products, the chances of you seeing a relevant ad is higher, which means your user journeys are more satisfying and you get what you're looking for. From a marketer's perspective, I think that's a much more multi-matrixed discussion. And I think to me, like 3 areas where it's been kind of a clear win when you use AI-based campaign is performance. So I started by saying, we measure every campaign that's out there, every big product initiative on our end. And what we've noticed is PMax drives up to 27% better conversions for an advertiser versus that same dollar invested in a single channel campaign. Now, doesn't mean you should just be moving your budgets into a PMax campaign. No, search drives really good performance. But for a lot of advertisers now, they're at a point where search is doing great and they're trying to figure out what's the next frontier. How do I go beyond just search as a network? And that's where PMax helps. It just complements what you're doing. And while doing that, you're seeing better value. The second element is consolidation, the one you mentioned. So again, if you're a small advertiser with not a big team supporting, or you're working with an agency like 360, but you want to make sure your setups is very simple and it's consolidated, then PMax gives you that. It gives you one campaign that just runs across all Google inventory, and it pushes a lot of work towards an AI model, which in the past would have been manually managed by you as a client or an advertiser. So that consolidation factor really helps, but it depends. It depends how more advanced you are, how big of a customer you are, and where you want to bring in that consolidation, which brands, which markets, which type of campaigns. And then the final piece is using AI models, whether it's for performance tuning or in the discussion we had earlier around Gen AI. I think I'm super excited about the fact that we launched Gen AI features, which is basically prompting in Google Ads by which you can create better assets. This was originally launched just in English, but now we support 7 European languages, and that really helps advertisers get to the next level quicker and build out better creatives using Gen AI features in the back end. So to me, it kind of levels the playing field at the end of the day. If you're a small advertiser and you've always wanted to go live across all Google campaigns or all Google inventory, or you really didn't have the time and the scaling, now it allows you to get there. If you're an agency and you're trying to scale faster and become bigger, have a bigger impact on your customers' business, now you can do that with these automated campaign types. And Google's not the only one. There are others in the marketplace too. So to me, what I've seen as agencies kind of differentiating themselves, bringing in the best practices, learning from one another, campaigns they're setting up, and then scaling this across more of their accounts. There's always roster of clients that would love to do more of AI-based campaigns, less of just single channel campaigns, and vice versa. And as an agency, you're in a really good spot to have those discussions and own those work streams for your client.
Brilliant. Yeah, makes perfect sense. Just out of curiosity though, in regards to the better performance, and you mentioned that sort of 27% more conversions and value and getting more value from your investments. Why do you think that is? Is it again a build on what you said after that you're literally working kind of smarter, faster, cheaper, not having to to in a manually intensive way, repeat a campaign across different territories, for example, or across different Google products?
Yeah, so a big part of it is just that point you mentioned, the fact that you can go 0 to 10 quicker with a campaign type. Then you can start using some of these new features to build out better creatives. And then the third element is like using AI models to pick out where to advertise across all Google networks, right? So if you're running a search campaign, you're just running search on google.com search. If you're running PMax, the campaign decides where do you want to be visible next for a users or a prospect. Is it Google search? Is it shopping? If you're a retailer, YouTube, display, Gmail, Maps, it kind of does that math for you. So that gives you the advantage. Also, like what we've seen is search campaigns have been there for a long time. YouTube campaigns have been there for a long time. And as advertisers have been using these campaigns, a lot of settings have been fairly legacy. So imagine you create an exclusion for all audiences X, which is based on a third-party cookie data set. Over time, that data set has kind of changed, evolved, deteriorated in certain fashion, but your targeting is very direct. It's very exclusive. What you miss out is the opportunity cost on reaching maybe 5% of that audience which would have converted if you had advertised. Now with the AI model, it can understand that a little bit better and figure out that 5% of audience that you've excluded that might convert if you see the ad. And that's the beauty, I think, and that's why I think it's a good complement to what you're doing. It's not a replacement for a search campaign or a YouTube, because you want to continue doing those campaigns. They've been set up over years, they are perfected, but there are some gaps here and there, and the model helps you pick those out better.
Yeah, I'm getting a better picture of optimizing on multiple fronts, multiple levels here. And I bet that congratulations on the 7 languages, but I'm sure that you're getting language requests left, right, and centre. When's this one coming up? You can't roll it out multilingual fast enough, can you, in that regard? But taking a step away from looking specifically at what Google's been doing, Performance Max, it is just such an exciting time in terms of the speed of development of AI and generative AI, building on what you guys are doing, but also drawing on your decades worth of experience as well. Can I get you to kind of look in your crystal ball a little bit? Nothing too definitive. It's fine. We won't hold you to it unless hopefully you want to come back and speak to us again this time next year. But what do you think the impact of generative AI is likely going to have on advertising marketing over next 6 to 12 months? And you are allowed to kind of maybe include the hopes and dreams of PMax in informing those impacts as well. What do you think?
Yeah, so again, brilliant question. Don't have a crystal ball, so I don't know what the predictions are, but I can maybe make some calculated, the thoughts in this on this question. So there are 4 areas again, I think, where in the future with Gen AI, at least in the next 6 to 12 months time frame, advertisers, marketers using these solutions can drive better performance. The first one, I think, is just reach. Like as an advertiser, you'll be able to reach much more higher volumes of prospects, just to keep it simple. A study we did on our end, we noticed 73% of European consumers, for example, are going through multiple sources before they decide what they want to buy. So being able to build a creative that just reaches more variations in a short period of time can help you get a better reach for the dollar that you're spending. So reach, I think, would be another big area where advertisers can get value. Performance is, again, something we've talked about, but just to summarize it and maybe give you a statistic that would relate better. Based on a bunch of studies I've seen, like creative has the biggest impact. More than, if not half, of your performance of your marketing campaigns are kind of owned by how good your creatives are. It's actually more important than the media you run and the brand you have. So these things are important, but your creatives have the biggest impact. It's what the customer sees or a prospect sees, right? So it has a massive impact. And we've also noticed in Google Ads, we measure this thing called the ad strength, which tells you how good an ad quality is or ad setup is. on an average, if someone goes and improves their campaigns and their ad trends go from average or poor to excellent, they see up to 6% better conversions for their ad investment. So just by the nature of improving your ad trends, you can get 6% conversions for the dollars you've spent, right? So it does help performance, and Gen AI is a good unlock for you. And then finally is savings. Like a lot of us are advertising, and we're trying to reach customers. A study I noticed recently, which was done by the Creative X teams, this was a slightly older study. It was done in 2022, so this number might have changed, but they just looked at overall ad investments, and they came up with a number of $1 billion of ad spends that is currently subpar. So these are advertisers out there running ads using the creatives, but these creatives can improve. And that's a lot of wasted dollars. And if you turn it around, that's a lot of savings you can have by just having better assets. So if you're an advertiser, just building better assets is not just about performance, you also save a lot of dollars. And then finally is scaling, the part I mentioned. It's if you're in the market, if you're a small advertiser, you're struggling with resource constraints, Gen AI features can help you improve your production capacity. And it's not even for small advertisers. We've seen big advertisers do great things with it. We got one case study actually from US. It's a pretty famous brand, Event Ticket Center. They're an aggregation business for tickets online. They started using our Gen AI toolkit within Google Ads, and they were able to 5x their production capacity when it comes to building creatives. And with that, they drove up to 300% better conversions. So a lot more conversions just by creating more assets. And it's not like they couldn't do that manually. Yes, they could, but using Gen AI made it just that much easier for them. So I would say scaling will be the biggest advantage, and that'll be the biggest trend we'll see with the launch of Gen AI models.
Brilliant, thank you. Obviously, really, I know that this is your bread and butter. This is what you hopefully not keeps you awake too many nights. But I can totally see why it's exciting. Particularly, I think for me and anybody else listening, there's been a lot of hype around Gen AI and AI taking people's jobs and so on, and it's just so nice to hear that actually it makes the creative even more important, right? The ideation that's what sells stuff, and that's not going to change. I think it's just doing so smarter, faster, cheaper, as I've said already, is going to be so important. So it's just, I'm really heartened by your thoughts on this, and I think it just leaves us to cover for the audience the best practices that are emerging. And before I get you to answer that question, I'll just remind the audience that Matz is here for you. So if you've got any questions, I think we've got a couple coming through. Please do type them into the chat and give Matz a chance to have a drink. I know doing all of this talking can give you dry mouth, absolutely. But yeah, those best practices. You've sort of shared with us the impacts over the next 6 to 12 months. What best practices are you seeing emerging regarding effective measurement and ad campaign effectiveness in this kind of post-Gen AI world that we've been describing?
Yeah, I think, and that's a pretty loaded question, because that question has been asked every year, even before AI models were in place for advertising in general. There are three trends that I think are pretty important to acknowledge and then work with as a marketer. The first one is around management of consent. And if you're in Europe, this should not be news to you. Every local authorities have a point of view around how user consent should be requested and then translated into ads that they are seeing from the brand, as well as how their user journeys are measured on a customer's website, and making sure users' consent is collected in a complacent fashion and then used as a way to measure what's happening for that user, but also for others where we can probably imply some information using modeling. So to me, consent management is super critical, and that's something will become bigger and bigger element of any measurement framework or foundations you put in place. And then the second element, very fast forward on that, is modeling. So can we utilize modeling features now using machine learning or AI models to fill the gaps in any direct measurement that we used to be able to track for a user. But now, due to loss of cookies or loss of cross-browser behavior or loss of identifiers on devices like Apple and Android, how do we fill that gap using modeling technologies? And to me, that's the next big frontier for measurement. Just the foundational element of how you measure an attribute is evolving. There's a lot of tech there. I won't go into the details of tech, what Google has to offer, plus others. But as an advertiser, as a marketer, you want to acknowledge that and pick your settings, pick your future methodologies. And the final element, I think, is emergence of testing. I think it's become even more important to now start looking at a bit more holistically, look at using probabilistic modeling, behavioral modeling, whatever works for you to measure the effectiveness of your ads. There are a bunch of solutions you can use. You can use something simple as conversion lift. So you kind of show ads to certain segments of users and hold back on others and see if there's an actual lift in performance. Potentially, you can be setting up things like a geo experiment. So same method, showing ads to some, not showing ads to others in a controlled fashion, but across geos or demographies. And then advanced MMMs. And this is a really interesting space because that's where I feel the big buck would be for marketers to understand on a large scale, beyond just marketing, all of your business activities. How are they impacting overall sales and performance, and what levers should I be readjusting once every MMM cycle, which could be once a year, once every 6 months, whatever is your business flow. On the PMax front, I think the biggest trend we are working towards is we have a big cohort of advertisers that are now using PMax. Up to 2/3 of advertisers in Europe are using PMax in some capacity. Their big question is, how do I test things within a campaign now? If I'm making a change, how do I see if it's incremental or not? And we've announced bringing more optimization experiments style features within PMax, so you can do more head-to-head testing. Let's say you want to turn on URL expansion, but it's a feature within PMax. You're just not sure how much incremental performance does it bring. In the future, you'll be able to do those kind of tests better. And to us, I think that'll be the next big thing for next year.
Yeah, brilliant. And I think going back to your last answer to my last question, which was about scaling, if you're creating so much more content and creatives, which I hear brands and advertisers really needing in an era of personalization, right? Then these areas that you pointed to for best practice sort of emergence going forward around modeling and testing are going to be absolutely key, because if we're increasing just the sheer scale of what we're producing from a creative standpoint, then knowing what works and what doesn't kind of in and of itself becomes a little bit more difficult. So it's really interesting to hear you say that. I mean, do you think that we've not mentioned personalization, and I do want to get to the questions, which we'll do after this point, but just to tie everything you've sort of talked to me about in terms of impacts over the next 6 months and best practice emerging over the next year or so, that personalization is a huge driver of all of this?
Yeah, I feel like personalization was an important driver potentially 10 years back itself, right? Just the way you did that was very, very different than the way you would achieve that now. I think that's super critical to acknowledge. And it used to be a luxury. Like, hey, I'm a big brand. I'm building personalization engines in the back end. So if someone comes to my website, I'll try and figure out what they're interested in and adjust my content accordingly. It's a big privilege that I can set up. I think now customers just expect that's the case. So it's not that you need to do that and that's an extra. That's a bare minimum. If they don't see relevant content on your website, they will be discouraged to come back again. And to me, like, AI models can really help, but it's a lot about your brand, your services, what you want to go lead with, and what you can measure about a user, and that's completely owned by you as a company.
That's a really interesting way of thinking about it. I just know that I'm sick of hearing about hyper-personalization, because really, I think in that regard, to your point, 10 years ago, we wanted personalization, but now sort of the Gen AI rubber of the tires has come up to, as the road has come up to meet those tires. So we're actually getting to that point where we can scale and test and manage and model to such an extent that every customer gets a slightly more personalized individual message, or next best message, next best offer, that kind of thing. So it's really exciting times in that regard. We are getting a couple of questions through. One I wanted to ask is, on behalf of the audience, is, after hearing everything that we've talked about, particularly given the fact that when you're an advertiser or a marketer, there are peaks and troughs in your businesses. There are seasonal times where you'll make a lot of money. When it comes to peak times like that, as we might be coming up to one, because I don't want to ruin it for those listening to on demand, but Christmas is a pretty peak time, right? What is the one thing that you would urge any listener or in our audience to go away and do from having heard you speak today?
Yeah, and so is the question, Mia, more about just peak and retail, or are you thinking just all customers in general?
Just, I mean, I suppose, how do you want to answer it? I think it is more mission critical when you're coming up to the time of peak, right? So everything that we've talked about is relevant, right?
Yeah.
But to me, it kind of becomes even more relevant when that search, browse, discovery, convert funnel is key to making the largest proportion of sales, which does tend to be, if you're a florist, it will be just before Mother's Day. But most people are looking to make as much money to maximize the sales opportunity during the last quarter, right? Because you've got Black
Absolutely.
Friday, Cyber Monday, Christmas, for example. So I think I'm talking about literally mission critical. Run away, run. When this webinar ends, what do you want people to literally have vapor trails behind them to try and do between now and the next most mission critical time for sales for them?
Absolutely. Yeah. So first I want to acknowledge retail is super critical for us at Google, and we want to do the right thing for our retailers. And there are a couple of things you should be very much aware of. You're actually at a point where this is a pivot. We're very close to Christmas. Shopping windows are kind of shut down. So you want to start pivoting towards, if I have a store presence, we know users are now gravitating towards a store to buy their last minute purchase. So potentially using things like Performance Max for store goals would be a great solution if you want to make that pivot and drive more footfall traffic. A lot of advertisers in the retail space now at a point, I think, as you're coming to the kind of peak of your performance, you want to start planning for what's in the future as well. And the biggest trend I've seen is retailers switching from just optimizing towards sales to setting up the infrastructure to optimize towards profit. And that is really critical because margins are generally thin. I've been in retail. I've spent 2 years in retail, and I know this firsthand. You want to make sure you're maximizing your margins and your profits. So we're looking at a lot of new feature sets that can help you maximize your profits with Google Ads, but also as an advertiser, that should be your focus. The other strategic discussions that are happening, which if you're a retailer, again, you need to start thinking about is, do you have a strategy for acquiring new customers versus retaining existing customers? You're coming to a point where you've acquired a lot new customers, hopefully, because you have amazing products, you have amazing advertising, and you've reached your prospects and they've converted on your website. Do you want to start making some pivots? So get ready to a point in early Jan when you start building out retention campaign styles to bring these users back and make them loyal customers. Yeah. And at the same time, if you're in the middle of your peak, which should be the case for a lot of advertisers, there are multiple peak days in December. It's not just 1 day or 2 day. Yeah. Are you maximizing towards driving new customer acquisition? And are you measuring them especially, and then are you activating them especially as well? So that would be like the biggest recommendation for retailers. For all advertisers, I think it's important to make sure you have the right creatives, look at your ad strengths, look at your asset reporting, adjust your creatives based on your promotions, look at audience signals, make sure you add the right audience signals, make sure you have your first party data integrated so your campaigns are powered using the best performance data in the back end and also user data. And for a lot of advertisers that are not in retail, some of them are planning their big peak in Q1, yes. Right? Yes. So I think for, let's say, lead generation style businesses, if you're a finance advertiser, insurance advertisers, etc. I think the number one thing you should do after this call is to figure out, do you have the right measurement foundation in place? Because for AI-based campaigns, that is super critical to drive better performance. It learns from what's working really well. And the only way for it to learn what's working really well is if you feed it the measurement data. So ask yourself the question, are you tracking the right conversion? Is it the most qualified conversion or the qualified value of a user that you believe will drive better revenue downstream or lead to, conversions? And then figure out how you want to maximize that, value change, that qualified conversion. To me, if you're not in retail, this should be a big umbrella to unlock. I feel like if you're in retail, you've done that. You've done that 20, 30 years back because you're optimizing to actual sales and then customer lifetime, etc. If you're not in retail, this is still a growing journey for you to act on.
But you've got the advantage of, having Gen AI where retailers 10, 15 years ago didn't in that regard. But no, I very much appreciate that response, Matz, because in my mind, everything's retail, everything's B2C, but we're seeing so much growth in the B2B space that I really appreciate you making sure our other audience members aren't overlooked. But we all have, as you rightly point out, we all have those seasonal moments and peak to have to, the business rush that we have to prepare for. So that's brilliant advice. I'd like to thank Toby for his question. I think this is probably going to bring us out to the end of our discussion. Unless anyone wants to get a burning question in there, I will make sure I try and get that one answered. But Toby wants to know, Matz, how much bigger could PMax get?
I love this question.
Google wants total global world domination, but seriously, for Toby's sake, can you give us an idea about how big you think it can get? And I think maybe also give us an idea about the context within which you feel best equipped to answer that question. Because Toby hasn't been particularly clear about whether or not he's talking about market share or the areas of assets or creatives or the ecosystem it serves. So how do you want to answer that question, Matz? How big could it get?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I know Toby, so I'll text him later. So I think I know Toby, and I think it's a very valid question. So I personally feel it. As you mentioned, it's relative to the scale. To me, PMax does drive value for advertisers. For some, it drives a lot more than others. So if you're in retail, you've seen amazing results and you've kind of latched onto it, and it's become a big part of what you do. For others, it's kind of getting there as well. We've seen good examples in lead generation businesses, travel businesses, banking, finance. So it's across the board. We've seen PMax being utilized slightly differently and with slightly different settings. Our aim is that it becomes a valuable part of your portfolio. We want to bring the best of Google AI, the full force of Google AI in PMax, because it represents all our channels and networks. We'll continue bringing the best of AI in all Google products. So search will get really good, amazing improvements. YouTube will continue to get improvements through YouTube campaigns, potentially demand gen campaigns. So the campaign is as good as you make it. What we've done is we've had 20 very significant launches this year to make this campaign even better. And we've actually done a quick recap of that. So Toby, if you haven't seen that, check it out. It's if you go to our help center and just search for 2024 Google Ads recap on, I think, November 18th, we published an article. And that should give you some flavor of what to expect next year. It'll be more insights, more reporting, more control. And it really is on the advertiser to use this and make it a big part of their marketing portfolio. We feel this drives good results and it drives the right reactions for advertisers. And we want to acknowledge there's a lot we need to do to build this product out even better. So keep giving us feedback on what we should be doing. To us, I think that is more important than how big this campaign becomes. It's reaching a lot of our customers. It's driving a lot of value. We want to continue building on that further next year.
Okay, brilliant. I think that brings us to time, Matz, unless there's any other questions coming in. I mean, just final thought. We've had. Do you have any final thoughts for us? I mean, particularly in regards to Standard campaigns. I think, in fact, yes, sorry, Beth has kindly asked whether or not standard campaigns, search campaigns will eventually become irrelevant. Where does it leave the standard campaign nowadays?
Yeah, so search campaigns are super important, and I think it's important to acknowledge that PMax is here to complement your standard search campaigns, your PPC campaigns. Yeah, the results you get from search, it's almost impossible to match it with any other campaign type. So if you're running one campaign with Google, make sure it's search campaigns because it'll give you the best results. PMax complements search campaigns. Their aim is to complement search campaigns. We've migrated some of the campaign types into PMax. For example, we migrated Smart Shopping campaign, which is specifically for retailers. But for most of our advertisers, we see it's doing the right thing. It's running PMax and search together drives really good results. So I don't think we are ever going to be at a point, and I will say ever with a big caveat because I don't know the future. But
Yeah.
as long as I can see, like search is going to be our flagship. It drives the best results for our customers, and we will continue bringing the best of our AI in search campaigns for you.
Great. I think I take away from that, you're still going to need to walk before you can run, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I would
Brilliant.
look at PMax as a safety net when you're running search campaigns and you want to grow across all networks.
Hmm.
PMax helps you get there quicker, and it uses AI, so a lot of manual work is reduced on your end. But search drives the best results. It's the best performing campaign we have, and we have only plans to make it better next year.
Yeah, exactly. I think Beth, in that regard, then Google is highly unlikely to neglect search going forward. So, Matt, will you stay with me while I thank you, of course, for sharing your knowledge, your expertise, and what's been keeping you busy and what you've been working on this year and will be into the next. It's been really, really fascinating. But please stay with me while I also thank our audience for joining us for a couple of minutes over time, but I think it was well worth it. And stay tuned on the 360 Stream socials to find out when our next webinar will be. But I know everybody is going to join me in thanking you, Matz. Thank you so much for your time, and have a great Christmas, and have a great Christmas and New Year to everybody that's joined and tuned in. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Miya, for hosting me, and thank you all the listeners for taking the time out.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure, Matz. All the best. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.